Hi everyone, and welcome to the first learning workshop of Astra DB's Build-A-Thon. We're so glad to host you today. I believe we'll just take a couple of minutes for our fellow hackers to join in and then begin. But in the meantime, sit back, relax, we'll get back to you. All right, I think it's time to quickly start this workshop. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from whichever part of the world you're joining. And we're so glad that so many of you could join us today, whether you're joining us on Zoom, on this live on this webinar, or you're joining us on that streaming platform, or you will be seeing this recording later. But we are so glad to host you in the first hackathon workshop, hackathon learning workshop of Astra DB's Build-A-Thon, powered by AngelHack and DataStax. Now, today's workshop is about introducing you to Astra DB and how to get started. And of course, something that we've been waiting for, how to bring your A game. So pretty interesting stuff we have lined up for you today. But before getting into the agenda, I would definitely like to give a quick shout out to the team who made this happen, who made this workshop happen. So basically the DataStax and the AngelHack team on call today. So big shout out to Ryan, Jack, Rags, and Aaron, who are joining us from the DataStax team, and obviously Harish and Zale, who are joining us from the AngelHack team. And I'm Asta, who is also part of the AngelHack team, and I'll be your host today. Now let's quickly dive into the agenda for today. So of course, first is the introduction to Astra DB's Build-A-Thon. A lot of you have been now with us for a month almost, and must be knowing about Astra DB's Build-A-Thon. But for those of you who are joining us new, definitely a quick introduction of what the hackathon has in store for you. And then we go ahead and introduce you to Astra DB and how you can get started. Pretty simple, pretty easy, and our colleagues and friends from DataStax will take you through that. The next is learn how to create your own game. So that's something really interesting, some really interesting content in store for you today. And finally, we'll close with some closing notes and obviously Q&A. Excited? Great. So let's quickly start with Astra DB's Build-A-Thon. Now, like I mentioned, so many of you have joined us from almost about a month and definitely would know a lot about the hackathon. And definitely after the first challenge launch, all of you must have started hacking. But for those of us who are joining new, basically, Astra DB's Build-A-Thon is a virtual hackathon, but with a twist, because it's not a single hackathon, it's a series of mini hackathons, which ultimately leads you to a finale. And yes, that's happening between the 21st of Feb to the 28th of May. And we have 3 different challenge months coming your way. The first, by the way, has already started. We just launched the first challenge month on the 21st of Feb. And what you have to do, so basically you can start building your projects, your solutions on the challenges that we are giving. Absolutely free, absolutely flexible. And that's why we call it a side hustle hack. Because when we talk about the rules, it's very flexible. So either you can do, you can participate in a single month challenge, or you can do all 3 challenges completely upon you. All you have to do is use Astra DB at its core and create magic. So that's all we expect from you. But yes, a lot of magic and innovation. Now, in terms of the schedule, for those of you who have just joined us, we have just completed our pre-hackathon workshop. So there are a couple of workshops that in case you have missed out, that would be available as recordings on the participants guide. So you can go ahead on the participants guide, go to the resource section, and you can find those workshops. But for all of you, as I mentioned, we have already released the first challenge statements and the first month has started. So basically we have officially begun the hackathon. The round of challenges have been launched on the 21st of February. I'm sure all of you who are there as members have seen it. In case you still haven't seen it, please go ahead today. It's all available on your participants guides. It's available on your socials. So all the challenges are there. It's now time to start hacking. The next is obviously the learning pathways. While we release the challenges, we also release the learning pathways. There's a fun quiz available for you. Absolutely flexible in case you will feel like, do give it. But yes, we have some brownie points in the leaderboard in store for you if you do. Now, this is the first Build-A-Thon workshop of the hackathon itself. So that's happening today. So if you've joined us today, that's where we are. And then next up is next Friday, we have the team formation and idea pitching session. For those of you who are still looking for team members or you're looking for some help with your ideas, definitely the mentors will also join us. The details of how and where to join will be shared with you shortly on Slack. So do keep an eye on it. And that's happening, coming to you live on the 4th of March at 11 a.m. EST, 4 p.m. GMT. Next up, on the 11th of March, we also have the mentor office hour. So while the mentors are available on the mentors channel, of course, a lot of you are actually asking questions, but for those of you who do not know, you can just ask your queries on the mentors channel in the Hack Slack. But definitely we have a dedicated hour for you with the mentors. That's happening on the 11th of March. And the details are mentioned in the participants guide and the schedule. So please have a look at it and join. Now, some important dates, that is the submission deadline, which is coming to you on the 18th of March. So the submissions open on the 4th of March, 2 weeks before the deadline. That's when you can enroll yourself on the submission platform and start submitting anytime and can edit anytime between these 2 weeks. And the details for that also would be coming shortly. Now, between the 18th and the 19th March, we have the judging. And finally, we have the winner announcement coming on the 20th of March. So really, really exciting 1 month in front of you before we release the second challenge statements. Now, how to participate? For those of you who have just joined us, definitely no rush. We still have 3 weeks to go before the submission deadline. So you have a lot of time in hand, but in case you've just joined us, then do follow some of these steps, which are very important to get started. If you have registered, I'm sure you have joined the Hack Slack. If not, please do join that. The links are available on the welcome email. After that, do sign up for Astra DB because that's where you're building your projects. That's what's the core of the hackathon itself. So if you don't have an account, create one. And then while you have joined the Hack Slack, also join the DataStax Discord community channel, because a lot of information on Astra, on Cassandra is available there, and you get to meet like-minded developers like you. So definitely do join the DataStax Discord community channel. All the links are available on your participants guide on the website. So definitely please go ahead and do that. Attend at least one learning workshop. So this is the third learning workshop, actually. We had 2 pre-hackathons learning workshop. And now for the hackathon itself, this is the first one. We have 2 more to go. So in case you have missed the first 3, which is even including today's, you still have 2 more workshops to go. And the schedule is available on the participants guide again. Form and register your team. In case you are hacking solo, then definitely do register your team because even solo hack members have to register. But yes, if you're still looking for that one person needs to join your team, you can do it the organic way, which is go to our free agents directory and the teams directory, find like-minded individuals and connect. And if you're still not able to find that right person, we also have a networking session coming up your way. And last but not the least, start ideating and building because that's why you're here for. And now let's look at the prizes. While we can't talk about this enough, because this is so attractive and definitely not something that we could win, but that's up for grabs for you. So And like I mentioned, this is a side hustle hack, right? So we definitely award all the monthly winners and the grand finale winners. So even if you're participating in just one monthly challenge, you still have a set of awards to be won. So in terms of the monthly challenges, the winners get 2,500 USD as a team. The first runners up is getting 1,500 USD, and the second runners up is getting 1,000 USD as a team. Now, all those teams who are selected and then win the grand finale, the winners get 5,000 USD as a team. The first runners up, 3,000 USD, and the second runners up team gets 2,000 USD. But that's not all. We have some more prizes your way. Now, while I mentioned, you can either choose to just hack in one of the challenges, but if your team chooses to do all three, then the top three teams who are doing the same get awarded with USD 500 as a team. Now, I don't know if you've already got the friend or your colleague to this hackathon, but if not, definitely do that today. Your referral codes are there on your welcome email, because the top two referrals, hackers who have the maximum number of referrals get USD 250 as individual winners. Now, again, like we were mentioning, we have the workshops where you are attending, you can learn a lot of stuff, but we also have learning pathways, which are there your way. So each and every participant, the first 60 participants in each challenge month who actually go ahead and successfully complete these learning workshops are getting USD 50 each. Now the swag for the leaderboard. So we have gamified this hackathon a bit, and definitely we have a leaderboard in place. You all must have been seeing your names, and if not, then please do look at the leaderboard criteria, because one of the other elements is something that you must be missing. So do see how you can counter that and then get onto the leaderboard. But basically, those people who are on the leaderboard and the winners get a swag box. The top 10 winners get a swag box worth 200. The next 20 hackers get a premium edition Astra DB hoodie, and the next 100 hackers get an exclusive Astra DB t-shirt. So that's the swag for you. So definitely do keep an eye on that leaderboard. And now the first challenge statements are already there. So yes, that's what we were waiting for the mini hacks to launch. So the launch happened on the 21st of this month, that is on Monday. And we have 3 challenge statements your way. We're just quickly introducing you to the 3 challenge statements. Obviously, all of you must have gone through it by now. Some of you must have already started hacking. But basically, each team can choose any of these 3 challenge statements and start building on it. And the submission deadline, like I mentioned, is on the 18th of March. The first challenge is obviously the A game. What we want is for you to build a game that anyone can enjoy, a simple game that anyone can enjoy, just having Astra DB as its core. The second is a social challenge, which talks about creating solutions that address society's most critical environmental problems. So you can, take your thinking caps, think creative, and build something using Astra DB at its core. And last but not the least, in case you think there is something apart from these 2 challenges that you would definitely want to build on and you would be able to create a difference, please feel free to go ahead and build your own solution. The only criteria that we have is use Astra DB as its core. So these are the 3 challenge statements for you. More coming up in the next 2 launches that we have in the next coming months. So now I know all of you must be thinking right now, which challenge do we choose? How do we crack it? What is the one thing that we want to know about the challenge? How can we decode these challenges? Now for that today, I have a very special guest with me who would not only take us through Astra DB's how to go ahead and get started with Astra DB, but also help us decode one challenge by giving an example of the challenge itself. So without further ado, let me call upon Ryan Welford, developer advocate at DataStax. Thank you so much, Ryan, for doing this for us, and over to you.
Of course. Thank you, Asta. I'm going to go ahead and I guess share my screen, take over. Let's see if we can figure this out quickly. All right. Well, again, thank you, Asla, for the introduction. It looks like we have a lot of really cool prizes. I'm very impressed with the prizes that we have for this hackathon. I mean, I don't even have a Astra DB hoodie, and I would love one. So maybe I can get one of those soon. But hopefully, we have a lot of participants, and we can get those prizes out to people. Well, as Asla said, I am Ryan Welford. I am a developer advocate here at DataStax. And I have been responsible for running a lot of workshops and training users on how to use Astra and in multiple different environments. And it's been a really good experience, and I really like sharing that knowledge. So what is Astra DB for those of you who are maybe coming in new and don't know about it? So Astra DB is a database as a service built on the Apache Cassandra project, which is an open source database, which is highly scalable and highly performant. And Astra DB provides the ability to develop and deploy data-driven applications in a cloud-native environment without the hassles of database and infrastructure administration. One of the hallmarks of a large scalable database like Cassandra is that it is a bit maintenance heavy. And so Astra DB really allows users to kind of hand that aspect of it off to the pros and just be able to concentrate on using it to the best of their ability. And so Astra DB really simplifies the database and streaming operations with Cassandra. Some of the tools that are included with Astra DB, we package some helper tools around Cassandra. And one of the really cool tools that we include with Astra is called Stargate. This is a data layer that lives on top of Cassandra that provides APIs for you to interact with your data in a very convenient way. We have APIs for REST, for GraphQL, and even document APIs, which is really cool considering that the Cassandra is a tabular database. Using these APIs will allow you to use it in much more varied ways, including document. And it uses a very simple authorization token in order to authenticate that interaction through the APIs. It also includes a SQL shell in case you want to kind of get down and dirty and use the SQL query language to create your data modeling, your tables, and insert data. It also provides that in the web interface so that you don't have to like remote into or into a server or anything. It's available right on the web interface for you. And it also includes a bulk loader if you have a historical database that you want to migrate over and you want to load it very easily. There is a bulk loader that makes that really easy. And we also include metrics dashboards to monitor the health of your database and activity to know if it's getting overused or not overused, but like hammered pretty hard and make sure that you can address any issues that come up. So we really provide all the tools that you need to best use the Cassandra database. So to get started, we have a few examples on the Astra website. If you go to astra.dev/build-a-thon, that will take you to the Astra website where you can sign up for free to get started. And it also has a section on there, our sample app gallery. If you can see on the left side here, we have a link to the sample app gallery. And this includes a lot of different apps that both we and others have created, built around Astra, really showing off the power behind it. We have things like the Netflix clone using the GraphQL API, as well as a recent project that we did building a Goodreads clone. There's also a TikTok social media clone on there as well, kind of just showing off all the different ways that you can use Astra DB and all the different APIs used in different ways. So it's a really good resource to take a look at. A lot of those, most if not all, have the source code available that you can kind of dig around and see how it's done. So those are really good resources to take a look at. At DataStax, we have our DataStax developers YouTube channel. This is where we host a lot of our workshops, both live and recorded. And we have a lot of different playlists for learning Apache Cassandra, for learning Astra DB, for learning different aspects of development in general. And as you can see, we have a full 8-part Apache Cassandra course. If you want to really get down into the details of Cassandra and how to use it, we have playlists there as well. We also have a datastacks.com/dev website where we have courses that you can take to increase your learning or continue your learning on Apache Cassandra. This is an example of a data modeling course where you can learn how to kind of figure out what your application needs and how to best create a data model for that application. Recently, at the beginning of this year, on our DataStax developers YouTube channel, we did a 4-week boot camp where we went through the process from beginning to end of creating an application. And we start with the introduction to Cassandra, kind of the basics of what Cassandra is, what it can do, and then on to designing a data model for our application, and then building a Cassandra based backend around that data model, and then building the microservices with APIs on top of it, and creating this whole application from beginning to end. So it's a really good resource if you want a kind of a real life example and a recent real life example as well. It's a really good resource. I recommend that very much. Okay, so you have an idea, maybe a game idea. Maybe you have an idea for one of the challenges as you've heard about them. So what do you do? How do you get started? Well, I'm going to give you a brief walkthrough on how to get started with Astra DB. It's very easy. So if you go to the URL that you see, astra.dev/Build-A-Thon, you can do this now, or you can do it later. I'll kind of walk through it as we go. Let's see over here. You will come to a screen that looks like this, and we have very easy ways to sign up. You can sign up with your GitHub account, you can sign up with your Google account, or you can just provide an email and password. It's important to note that there is no credit card needed to sign up. It is completely free to get started. So the barrier to entry is minimal at best. I'm going to go ahead and sign in with Google since I already have an account. If you are signing up for the first time, there will probably be a little questionnaire at the beginning. How are you using Astra DB? What are your plans? Where are you coming from? What's your background? You can just provide if you're still learning, you can use those answers. I might ask you, what programming languages do you use? This is just to allow us to better understand our user base and make the features that they'll appreciate. But once you are all signed up and get into Astra, you'll see a dashboard that looks like this. And here is where you will be able to see all of your databases and kind of their usage, recent usage, as well as the current plan that you're on, which is by default free, and the credits remaining. So the way the free tier works is that you get $25 of use credit every single month. It refreshes every single month. And that is how the free tier works. So you can see I have a database already, but I'll go through how to create a database. It's very easy. All you have to do is create serverless database on the right here. I'm actually going to make this window a little bit bigger because I know that sometimes the stream is a little choppy. So on the right here, you can see there's a create serverless database button. I'm going to click on that. And to set up the database is very simple. We're going to give it a database name. I'll go ahead and call this Hackathon. Hackathon DB. Yeah. And then we need to provide a key space name. Now, a key space is a collection of tables. It's kind of a logical collection of tables. Sometimes it's called a namespace or a schema. But in this case, we're calling it a key space. And I'm going to call this a game, because I'm going to be showing you guys a game in a little bit. And then you can select your region. So the free tier, I believe, is locked to the Google Cloud service. We do have options for Amazon and Azure if you prefer those. I do believe that those require a paid account. And then you can select the region that is closest to you for performance. So I'm going to choose North America and then US Central. Oh, I guess that is locked out. There might be only one option per region. That's okay. US East is still pretty close. All right. So then once you select your provider and your region, and don't forget to provide the name. Okay. And you can click on Create Database. And it's going to take a little bit. And that's actually all you need to do. So in the background now, the service is spinning up a 3-node Cassandra cluster, which is pretty impressive. Anyone who has worked with Cassandra in the past will know that that is not a simple feat. So this is going to be, you can see the status is now pending. So this is going to actually be spinning up a 3-node cluster, which is a distributed system. And what that means is it will be able to scale to the load that is being requested of it, so that the performance and the availability of your data will always be consistent. All right, so now that is how you start a database. It's that easy. It only takes about 5 minutes for the database to spin up, and we'll be ready to go. So while we're waiting for this database to finish, let's see. I think I went back. Let's get started on how to learn how to create your own game. So I actually have an example. I'm going to send a message in the chat, a link to the example that we're going to be going over. It's called hootcards.io, which is kind of silly, but it's fun. I've got a little thing on my screen. All right, so if you go to hootcards.io, and I encourage anyone to go ahead and join me here if you'd like. It's a very simple little game web app. We're going to enter your name. You can put in whatever name you want. And you're going to open a pack of cards. And these cards are called hoot cards. They're little owls, and they have different rarities. So if I flip these cards around, you can see I have a couple gray ones. Those are common cards. And I am actually getting pretty unlucky, and I'm getting mostly commons and an uncommon card. But I can refresh and I can open a new card or a new deck. I'll enter my name again. Oops, if I spell it correctly. I can see what other cards I can get. All right, so I got 2 uncommons. So I'm getting a little unlucky. But if you go ahead and go to the site, you can open your own pack, and you can see if you can get the ultra rare card. And we also have an option to see all the packs that have been opened recently. So you can see a couple people have gotten ultra rares recently. I don't know if these are those who are on our workshop today, but I can go ahead and refresh. And as you can see, there's a bunch of different options, and you can see kind of what cards you've gotten and what cards other people have gotten, and you can kind of show off your ultra rares. So a very simple game, nothing too complicated. It's mainly to show kind of the communication between the backend database and our front end application, kind of in a cute way. So let's go ahead and check on. Let me refresh this real quick. Looks like it might be updating in the wrong order. Some of them aren't updating. But let's go ahead and take a look at our database. We can see that it is now active. So we are ready to use this database. So let me go ahead. I'm going to open some of the source code for our game here. So as you can see, this is an application made using Vue.js. And it's really simple. In our index file right here, we have our template. I'm not going to really go over in depth on how to use Vue. Hopefully you have your own front end framework that you like to use, whether it be Vue or React, or maybe you're doing something without, maybe not in JavaScript. Maybe it's in Java or something else. But in this case, I'm using Vue. I have my template, which is kind of my page. I have a card flip component, which is my individual cards. And I'm referencing an array in my main function here. And right now in this source code, I have a hard-coded array, right? So these are my cards. This is the array of objects I have. You can see I have common, or 2 commons, an uncommon, a rare, and the ultra rare. So this is just an example of all the different options I could have as my cards. Eventually, obviously, I don't want to hard code it. I do want to have it dynamic, which is what we use the database for. And then I have some styles to make everything look pretty, right? CSS magic. If I take a look at the card flip component, you can see that I am referencing my my hoot card, which is the artwork, the owl artwork with the color based on the rarity. And then I have the image for the back of the card, right? So all the backs of the cards are that same pink image. I have some CSS magic in the styles to make it flip. And then the logic is pretty simple. It is just getting some properties from our main app, which is the card itself, which includes the rarity component and the image URL, which I think I misspelled there, but I think it's fine. And then a state of whether it's flipped or not, right, to show the front or the back. And then the hoot card is also very simple. It is just the source image that we're getting the image URL and making those properties available to our template. This is where the properties are imported, and this is where those imported properties are made available to the template component. So if I go ahead, I can actually run this right away, right out of the box. And for those of you who are interested, this source code is actually available on the DataStax developers GitHub. It is used in a workshop, and you can go through it on your own and kind of discover how it's put together. And there's a kind of a at your own pace, on-demand workshop that goes with it. So if I go ahead and run the npm, or is it npm run dev, I believe? Yeah, run dev. This should open in here shortly. Might take a little bit. We'll be able to see the basic app running. Okay, so we have our 5 cards. I can flip them over, and you can see that I've got all the different options: 2 commons, an uncommon, a rare, and an ultra rare. Now, this is not dynamic. If I refresh, I'm going to get the exact same cards because I have hard coded it in my app. So my next step, now that I have kind of the basic, user interface figured out, how the game is working, I want to make it dynamic. So I want the data to be stored in a database, and on each request, on each load of the page, I want to dynamically grab a random selection of those cards based on their rarity, send that pack of cards to the front end, and then be able to open them just like this. Let's go ahead and get that going and take a look on how that's going to work. So the first thing I need to do is, because I'm going to be interacting with my database over an API, and we're going to be using the document API for this project because our cards are objects, right? So the easiest way to do this is to just store those objects in the database and retrieve them using the document API. So in order to communicate with the database over the APIs, I need to create an authentication token. And we make this really easy in the Astra dashboard. On your main dashboard, we have our Hackathon DB here. And all the way to the right, we have our ellipses menu, right? We can drop that down and click on Generate a Token, which brings us to the token management page. And then I'm going to select a role. Now for this demonstration, I'm going to use Database Administrator, which is a pretty high level role, but it guarantees that I have all the access that I need. There are a bunch of different roles that you can use to kind of more granularly control what access that token has. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and generate a Database Administrator token. And that generates a token right here. Now, it's important to note that if I were to navigate away from this page, I would not be able to see this information again. I would have to generate a new token. So we do provide the Download Token Details button here, which downloads a CSV with these values. So just for safety, I'm going to download that. But I'm also going to try and keep this page open because it's really easy to copy the really long token right out of here. So now that I have my token, I'm going to go back to my dashboard, just have that open as well. And now we're here. Cool. So now I have an authentication token, and this will allow me to communicate to the database from my app. So I go back to my source code. I'm going to close, I'm going to Control C out of that service that's running because we're going to make some changes. The first thing that I'm going to do for my app is install or run a NPM package that we've provided called Astra Setup. This streamlines the process of getting Astra connected to your app really easily. So I'm going to run npm exec, which is to run a package from npm. And it's called Astra Setup. And hopefully you guys can see this. Okay. And then I'm going to provide it two parameters. The first is going to be the database name, which we named Hackathon DB. And then the key space name so that it knows, which key space it's actually connecting to, which we called game. Now, what's cool about Astra Setup tool is if you don't have a database or key space set up yet, and you provide it the name of the database and key space that you want, it will actually go ahead and create that database and key space for you, which is super cool. So I'm going to go ahead and execute that. It's going to ask me if it can run. I'll say yes. It'll download the script and it'll ask for your authentication token. So obviously to create a database or to make that connection, get all the information, it's going to need the authentication token. Now I've already copied it, so I'm just going to go ahead and paste it in here. And you can see that it has found the database that I provided and found the key space that I provided. And it's set up credentials. Now, what this script is doing, it creates a environment variable file in your project. So this .env was just created. And let me make this bigger. It has all the information, all the connection details that you need to connect to Astra in multiple different ways. So it has your admin token, which is your authentication token, your application token, which is your authentication token as well, the database ID, region, and key space, which is all needed for connecting, and we'll see that in a little bit, as well as a GraphQL endpoint, which is a special endpoint for GraphQL API. We're not using that today, but it does provide, the Astra Setup tool does provide that as well if you want to use GraphQL. I noticed that there is a Q&A that I have neglected to pay attention to. So hopefully there are some answers.
Ryan, we'll be doing that at the end of the workshop itself. So we have dedicated 5 minutes, so don't worry, you can go ahead.
Perfect. Perfect. Now I know I'm moving a little quickly. This is there's limited time today, and I'm trying to give an overview of everything. So hopefully you're able to follow along with me. So now that we have the connection details all situated in our app, we have this environment file. We can now start creating the back-end infrastructure for our app. Now, this app is going to be using what are called serverless functions. And if you're not familiar with what those are, it allows us to hand off the creation of the back-end infrastructure off to something else. So we're going to use the Netlify CDN for our back-end serverless function provider, as well as in the future, we could use it for the hosting solution. So that hookcards.io is actually hosted on Netlify and provides those serverless functions as well. So we're going to go ahead and create one of those serverless functions, and I'll show you how it works. But first, we need to install the Astra.js library. And this is a JavaScript library that provides some easy to use methods for connecting to Astra DB. So I'm going to run a command to install that from npm install Astra.js collections, and we're using collections because we're using the document API. And we're going to create a client in our app to facilitate the connection between our app and our app. So in the functions folder and the utilities folder in there, we have a couple of pre-existing files. We'll talk about those in a little bit. I'm going to create a new file called Astra Client. And what's cool about this file is this is actually going to be a pretty universal file that anyone could use for their own project. It's going the way it works is very modular. And I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to copy some code over and I'll walk through it. Okay, so not too complicated. What this is doing is we're importing our create client method from our library that we just installed. And we are creating a new instance of our client. In this method, the get Astra client, we are using that imported method, the create client, and we're providing it a few variables or a few details: our database ID, the database region, and the application token. Now, we just used the Astra setup tool to import that data into our environment file, and we are referencing that environment file here. So the process.environment.Astra DB ID, that is referencing our environment file here and all the variables that are stored here. It waits a little bit to make sure that the connection is secured, and then it returns that instance of that client. So that's what this first method does. The second method is called get collection, and because we're using the document API, we're storing all of our objects, our JSON objects or our documents, in things that are called collections. And so we want to create collections and create references to those collections. And that's what this method does. So first, it creates a reference to our Astra client, right? So it's calling on this earlier method. And then with that client, we are specifying the namespace or key space that we want to use. So it's using the environment variable that we imported. So in this case, game. And then it's specifying a collection that we want to use. In this case, in this example, we are creating a collection called cards. So we're hard coding the collection that we're using in this application. If you wanted this to be more universal, you could provide a parameter here, collection, and then substitute this with collection, the collection variable. Oops. And then when you call on this method, you could just provide the collection that you want to connect to, and that will connect you to the correct method or correct collection. In this case, we only want one collection because we're just storing cards. So we are going to use the hard-coded method where we have our cards collection. Now, the first time this is called, the collection will not exist. So it will go ahead and create that collection. And then in subsequent calls, it will just reference the collection that already exists. And then, of course, we are exporting these methods so that we can reference them from other files. Go ahead and make sure that the changes are reverted. So that's our basic Astra client. And this is a very useful file that can be used in pretty much any project, to be honest. All right. And so now we are going to make a serverless function, but we need to do one more thing. We need to install a new library for the Netlify integration. So we're going to npm install netlify-cli. So this is kind of the command line tool that allows us to run our development environment as if it's being hosted on Netlify servers. So this allows us to provide those serverless functions to our front end in a development environment rather than constantly having to push it back up to Netlify to test things. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. And then I'm also going to go ahead and create a new serverless function called getCards. Now, the way serverless functions works is Netlify will look for files in the functions directory that we have here. It'll be in the root directory. So we have getCards and upload cards, and each file will be considered an individual serverless function, and it will dynamically create an endpoint for you to call, and it will execute whatever is in these files. So each file will be one serverless function. We already have one called upload cards. We're going to use this to upload all of our data to the database, kind of is a ease of use thing. But for the serverless function that we're going to create right now, this is going to be what we use to retrieve those cards. So let's think about what we want this to do. And while I do that, I'm going to kind of, okay, sorry. Yeah, let's think about what we want this to do. We want to retrieve all of the cards from the database because we want to start with all of our data. We want to randomly select 5 of those cards based on their rarity, and then send the newly created 5-card pack to the front end. So to do that, we have a couple of helper modules in our utilities. We have our pack builder file here that basically provides some functions to do that random selection based on the rarity. So I have some rarity definitions here. I have a function that picks the rarity based on the chances that each rarity has. And then it creates a pack based on a source deck. So we'll provide it all the cards. And the pack builder will take that source deck, randomly select 5 cards based on their rarity, and send it back to our serverless function. So these are just kind of pre-made things that I put into this project to kind of make my life easier. So all we're really concerned about in our serverless function is retrieving that data from the database, sending it to our pack builder functions that we already have, and then taking the result and sending it back to the front end. So to do that, in the interest of time, I'm going to just kind of copy a bunch of code over and I'll walk through it. We are importing 2 things. We have our get collection method from our Astra client that we just made. We have our pack builder method from the pack builder helper function. And then we have our serverless function. Now, this is a kind of a standard way that the serverless functions will look. We have our exports.handler equals async function because we have to wait for the function to complete. So that's why it's async. And then it's going to have a return value. In this case, we want to, if it's successful, we want it to be a status 200. And if it's a failure, so we're catching the error, we're going to return a status of 500 saying, hey, something happened. It's wrong, but we're not going to just crash the whole program. So that's why we have our try block here. In the function itself, we are getting a reference to our collection, right? And so this is hard-coded to be the cards collection. And then we are using one of the built-in methods for our collection library. So this is the Astra.js collection library. And we are doing a find method. Now there's 3 main methods that we could use. There are the create method, so we could actually create documents. There's the update method. So if we have a document that we've edited or already exists and we want to update that, there's a method for that. And then there's the find method, which is what retrieves the cards now, or retrieves the documents. Now, in our case, we already have the data up there, or we will. We don't need to create any new cards necessarily. We're just retrieving those cards. We're just using the find method. Providing it in empty objects will pull all of the data. And then we are getting our pack from our pack builder by providing the data from our result, right? So we're defining this constant result as all of our data from our database, and we're providing that using this map function to our pack builder, which will then create the pack of cards and send it back. Once we have that pack and if everything was successful, we're going to send back a status of 200, and the body of it is going to be a JSON object with the pack of cards that we have just created. We are providing the specific headers, saying that it is a JSON object. And then, of course, we have our error catching logic to say, hey, something happened, try again. So pretty simple. This is, if you take a look at the upload cards, it's going to be very simple. I have all the cards predefined here. And then we're using the create method to create those cards in the database. And then if it's successful, it's going to send back 200. If it fails, it's going to be error 500. So it's a pretty standard way to do things here. All right, make sure this is saved. All right, so a few things that we have to do, and I'll do this very quickly. We need to replace some of our hard-coded logic, right? So we don't want this anymore. if I can navigate my mouse. We don't want the hard-coded logic anymore. We want to do things dynamically. So I'm going to get rid of that hard-coded method. And I'm going to replace the rest of this just for speed's sake. We're going to use Axios, which is a library for API calls. And this is the path that Netlify will automatically generate. /.netlify/functions/getCards is going to be the dynamic path for, or the dynamic endpoint for that getCards serverless function that we just created. It's going to take the result in data and save it to our cards variable right here, which will then be pushed to our front end. All right, so if I save this and I launch my app, I'm going to launch it a little bit differently because we are using the Netlify CLI. I'm going to run Netlify dev, which will spin up our app in the environment that emulates Netlify's environment, right? This should automatically open. There we go. And as you can see, maybe it will load. Oh, there's no cards because we actually haven't uploaded the cards. So if I manually run Netlify/function/upload cards, right? Because we can manually hit this endpoint. If I run that, we can actually see on our terminal here, request with status 200. So that has written the cards to the database. Now, if I go back to here and refresh, it should be able to pull those cards. And now we have our dynamic cards all being pulled from the database. So you can see every time we refresh, we're getting new cards pulled from the database and pushed to the front end. Maybe I'll get an ultra rare. I don't know. Getting pretty unlucky today. That's okay. So that is kind of the basics of getting that the connection between Astra DB and our application set up, and kind of an example of how you can kind of dynamically generate results. All right. With that, I will turn it over to some Q&A, which I think we already have some.
Sure. First of all, let me just quickly thank you, Ryan. I think that was a wonderful, wonderful walkthrough. I believe it was pretty simple. This is exactly what we wanted, pretty simple, a game that everyone can enjoy, and it's really simple to build as well. And I'm sure that's got some thoughts running in the minds of the participants, and they're all set to build their game or the other challenges, definitely. But yes, some questions your way. I think, first of all, before we hit the main questions, I think Aditya had posted on chat. If you could show again the package name, please. I'm not sure which step was Aditya referring to, or in case you want him to put that on chat, that's also okay.
Yes, I assume you're talking about the Astra.js collections package for connecting.
Yes, that's what he's talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I'll type it. Actually, I will share it in the chat in just a second. I want to make sure I type it correctly. This is the command that I used, npm install at Astra.js/collections. And I'm also going to include real quick the repo that this workshop is based on as well, in case you want to kind of go through at your own pace. I know I went pretty fast and probably glossed over a few things that you wanted me to dive deeper on. Just in the interest of time, I did have to go quickly, but the workshop is provided at that repo, and there's a README that kind of walks through the whole thing. So that'll be some really good resources as well.
Great. I think we have another question that is coming up with Aditya, from Aditya. It says, hey, I'm confused about the steps after connecting the database in JavaScript. So probably just a couple of steps. Ryan, if you could just refresh our memory around that.
Yeah. So the steps after connecting the database in JavaScript. So to make sure, we're talking about the Astra client. So this is the connection in JavaScript, the connection to the database, which we're using our environment variables that we imported using the Astra setup command, which is the command line tool, the npm package. The steps after that is creating this client, providing the details, the application token, right, our authentication token, the database details, so that we can create that connection. And then because we're using the document API, and we're using collections. So this is creating a collection that we're calling cards in this case in the specified key space. So each database can have multiple different key spaces. We want to make sure that we're creating our tables or our collections in the correct key space. And that's what this method does. Once we have this client, we can then use this get collection method that we're exporting right down here. We can use this collection in our serverless functions to get a reference to that collection that we can then retrieve the data, save the data, and do whatever we want. And so our example for that is the get cards serverless function, where we are getting that reference to that collection and using the find method to retrieve all the data from that collection. Hopefully that makes sense. If there's a more specific step that maybe you're having trouble getting over, let me know.
Yeah, I think Aditya mentioned that he got that. So thanks a lot, Ryan, for that. Another couple of questions coming in, and I'll just quickly take this in the interest of time. One of the questions that is coming in from Boeing is, how many free Astra DB tier instances can I launch from my account? And I believe Aaron has already helped us with that answer. So what Aaron says is that you can have as many databases in your free tier account as you need. That's absolutely okay. It should be free as long as the usage of all the databases is below the USD $25 credit that you have. So basically, all the databases together should have the usage below $25, and then that should be fine. That should be free in case you run multiple instances. Another question for you, Ryan, that's coming up by Danny. He says, I know that Astra DB can be used for various applications, but is there a type of application that is more suitable or ideal for using Astra DB? Are applications that require very large database storage, or applications that require intensive query to the database, or what? So basically, he's trying to ask which is the most suitable application that you can use Astra DB on.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you're very correct in that applications that require a lot of data storage and intensive queries, definitely it is well suited for. It's based on Cassandra, Apache Cassandra, which is well known for being good for big data and resiliency in the light of server failures, which happen all the time. So anything that is mission critical is a word that's used a lot, is very much kind of in the wheelhouse of Astra DB and Cassandra. But what's nice about Astra DB is it kind of allows you to be more flexible with Cassandra than you normally would be if you were just running Cassandra on its own, especially using things like the document API, where you can use it like a blob storage or like a JSON object storage rather than just its traditional tabular database. And even the REST APIs and GraphQL APIs really enhance the flexibility of the underlying Cassandra database. But most suitable or ideal, yeah, probably big data. It's definitely a little overkill for a simple random card generator app, but it's a good example for how to make that connection.
Sure. Great. I think I can't see any more questions as of now. So probably thank you so much, Ryan, for the walkthrough and answering so many questions from the participants. Really, really appreciate you taking time out and taking us through this. I hope this immensely helps the participants. Now, just to take the workshop further, probably some last things that we would want to share as the next steps for the hackathon itself. And let me share my screen before that. Okay, so now that you have signed up for the hackathon, I know we have almost run out of time, but just a few next steps in case you are still just started and you still want to know how to start building your next steps. So do join the Hackathon Slack channel and the Telegram group, because now, at least for the challenge month, we'll have a lot of announcements in store for you. So definitely all those announcements will be available on Slack channel and the Telegram groups. Do join Astra DB. Obviously, I think by now you've realized this, that any project that you're building, just one simple rule is that you build on Astra DB. So definitely get that account created and do that. You have those signups on the website, on the Build-A-Thon website, and also on the participants guide. And definitely do join the DataStax Discord channel. That is also available. Those links are also available on the participants guide. Familiarize yourself with the Astra DB platform. So all the 3 workshop recordings that we have had till now are all available on the resource section in the participants guide, as well as the other details. So definitely do have a look at the resource section of the participants guide. Sign up and attend the learning workshop. So this is one of the major criteria that you have to get yourself listed on the leaderboard. So if you haven't already, or your friends or colleagues haven't already, do ask them to join the upcoming workshops that are coming for the next challenge months. The schedule is all available on the schedules page of the participant guide. And obviously, upon completion of the second and the fourth step, you will be a part of Astra DB leaderboard. Next up, start forming your hackathon teams. In case you're finding it difficult, go ahead in the free agents directory or the teams directory, find yourself, connect with the like-minded individuals. You have all the hackers available there on the free agents directory or the teams directory. And in case you are still finding it difficult to connect with someone, do join our networking session, which is happening next Friday. All the details would be given to you shortly. And finally, in case you want to know all the steps that you need to require to participate in the hackathon, go to the hackers checklist in the participants guide, because all the details are in there. Now, last but not the least, before signing off, I would definitely want you to join the networking session coming to live on the 4th of March, same time, next Friday. And that's where you kind of connect with different hackers, see what the ideas are, find that one person who's missing off your team, and also share your idea with your mentors and get feedback. So with that, I think we have just finished 2 minutes ahead of schedule, but I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot from this workshop. With that, I would say goodbye, and we will see you in the next workshop. Thanks a lot and have a good day ahead.